Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. How are we all today? Hello, Mia. How are you?
I'm very well, and you? Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining me on the couch for a cuppa for our fourth episode of EDspresso Café. So we named it How did Henry VIII, I don't know, like his coffee decaf. But really what we wanted to chat about was technology in the history classroom. So I'm really, really thrilled to have Mia Nixon with me this afternoon, who is a generally awesome learning architect. I think, Mia, we met once in person, and then I think we've only seen each other twice in person, but in between that, there were a whole lot of webinars during lockdown. So I feel like I know you a whole lot better than the time that we've actually spent together kind of necessitates or warrants, right?
Absolute online friendship. Yeah, I think we met 2 or 3 times before at your workshops. Yeah. And the most recent one, can you believe, was almost, well, it was a year ago down in Cape Town, just before COVID.
Yes, absolutely. When we're looking at inquiry-based learning. So we called Mia one of our webinar queens because Mia actually did a ridiculous number of webinars with us in 2020. Mia, do you know how many hours of webinars you did with us?
I do, and I have to say it's very many. It's not that I'm counting, no, but it was about 56 hours.
56 hours of webinars. Yeah, that's a little bit ridiculous, don't you think? Doing that much. Why did you do 56 hours of webinars? Let's actually just start there.
You know what? To be perfectly honest, I think a lot of educators will relate to me. COVID put the fear of everything into me. Suddenly we had to teach online, and then you came up with this wonderful idea to have webinars to train teachers for professional development. And I saw that one, and I did one, and I was hooked because there were so many options and so many wonderful things that we could do with the tech that we'd been using for years and years, that I had to have more. Not only that, it was lovely company during lockdown because we couldn't see anybody in our family. I mean, we love our families, but we miss a little bit of adult interaction. So
we kind of developed we got a bit of a family going, right?
So
tell me, I think I'm kind of intrigued as to your journey with technology, because I think that maybe when we first met more than a year ago, you wouldn't necessarily have described yourself as a technology, anything to do with education. So where did you kind of start, and what were some of the things that you did with your girls during lockdown that sort of kick-started you in this journey?
They were, well, first of all, I always thought I was tech savvy. And until, like I said, I went on some of your webinars and saw that I may have known a number of programs, but I didn't know the extent to which you could do things with them. So one of the things that I came across particularly was how much I loved and could utilize slides and PowerPoint and Bitmojis.
Oh, Bitmojis are fun.
They're my best. I used to, you send your friend a goodnight Bitmoji because it's cool. But who knew the world that could open up and the relationship that you could create with your children when your children in class, when you're not actually physically present with them. And they loved the Bitmojis. So I would say Bitmojis and PowerPoint and Google Slides were what I focused on during lockdown.
So what was the educational value of Bitmoji? How does that, because I mean, they're great and they're fun, but I think a lot of the time we kind of have to question, what's the learning value or what's the educational value? So how did you use Bitmoji for learning with your students?
I used I used Bitmoji primarily to maintain the relationship that I had with them in class. I think, knowledge and all of that is important, but I think a relationship with your students is very, very important as well. And I think they were nervous, they were scared, they needed to feel that they were still within our environment. And if my Bitmoji spoke to them like I spoke to them, then I felt that it gave them a sense of comfort during a difficult time. And then I decided during this last lockdown that in fact, why is it my Bitmoji that's doing all the talking? Their Bitmoji can do a little bit of talking too. And since they're older, they're in high school, they were able to create a Bitmoji. I allowed them to, I created a Google slide sharing, I shared it with them. They dropped their Bitmojis in with expressions that made them who they are. And then every lesson, I would start the lesson off with a conversation between their Bitmoji and my Bitmoji in class. And they were so excited to see who was going to star in the next history lesson. So it worked very nicely for the relationship, which I think is very, very important.
Absolutely. I love that, Mia. And I think connection over content has been so important in this, as we've evolved in our understanding of learning and education. I think that's one of the key lessons that we've taken away. So you mentioned earlier, Mia, that you use Google Slides and PowerPoint. And I think, Google Slides and PowerPoint, like who doesn't know what PowerPoint does? Who doesn't know, Google Slides is just Google's version of PowerPoint, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about this whole Google Slides and PowerPoint thing? Because you seem a little bit more excited about it than somebody should be about a presentation tool.
Well, that's the thing, Lindsay, because I feel a little, I used to be so proud of my PowerPoint presentations because the words used to fly in from the side and then spin around, and I was like, whoa, look at my presentation. And I didn't realize that there was so much more that you could do with PowerPoint and slides. So I thought, I'd been there, done that, got the t-shirts, you get up and you talk to your girls about a section of history and then you press the slide and a picture pops up. And
online, especially, we lose them like that. Like you just talk to a screen and you lose them like, we lost them in the classes, I think, but we just couldn't see. They gave you the interested face, but when you're in online learning, you can't see the interested face and you just know there's nothing going on in terms of learning options.
Absolutely. And so I felt that I needed to step up. If I was going to use PowerPoint or slides, I needed to step it up a notch, especially when it came to online learning. But the fascinating, well, not the fascinating thing, but the takeaway from that is that it's not just online learning where this new appreciation of what you can do with PowerPoint and slides, I use it now regularly in online lessons. I mean, not online face-to-face lessons, on-site lessons as well. It helped me with that.
So what are some of the different ways that you use slides and PowerPoint beyond just as a presentation tool? What are some of the things that you've done with those tools? Because I think often we feel like this EdTech thing is so massive. I have to know about all of these tools. But actually, we all know how to make a presentation. Like that's, for the most part, a basic skill. So what are some of the things that you did with that basic skill in terms of how you designed learning for your girls?
Well, the most basic of basic things that I learned on one of your webinars was to narrate a PowerPoint slide, which opened up a whole new world for me as well. And that was great, and that was wonderful. And then I developed upon that. So I started using my slides for collaborative exercises. I started using slides to hyperlink to other areas. And then my personal favorite were the Bitmoji comic books that I use again, which I learned in your webinar. And like you say, Lindsay, it's not about, I learned lots. 56 hours, it's a lot of time. And as I was mentioning to you the other day, it was a case of one thing stood out, and that was using slides for this purpose of Bitmoji comic books. And I think educators get completely overwhelmed with the amount of tech available that they think that they need to learn everything about everything. Not only does that overwhelm you as an educator, but I think if you're using everything in class, it can be overwhelming for the pupils as well. So
Absolutely.
I decided it's going to be slides, and it's the word maximizing, Linz. Maximize what you understand and what you know of one or two EdTech tools and run with it, and then develop as you go along, moving along, you know. So
let's talk about these comic books of yours, because I think I'd love to hear a little bit later about how you designed collaboration, because I think especially with content heavy subjects, I mean, history is just one of them, but there are so many. Collaborative learning design using technology is super powerful, but we're going to come back to that. So I've actually got some screenshots of your Bitmoji comics that you made, but before we show those, can you tell me what it was that really jumped out to you about this idea of using comics in teaching, before we have a look at what you created?
You know, Linz, growing up as a kid, I was obsessed with comic books. Now, you know, if you're a child of the 80s or 90s, without giving my age away too much, you know, you started off with Archie, you know, and Veronica and Betty and Archie and the whole love triangle. And then there were the superhero comic books, which I loved as well. And then as I got older, I started really appreciating your Asterix and Obelix, because they're hilarious and they're full of puns and idioms and allusions, and you actually need to be
she's a bit of a comic book nerd, this one.
Yes, I am. And you know what, the best part about comic books, Linz, is that I think our parents used to look at us and go, what are you learning from those things? But you know, we learned so much. So absolutely. I just thought, I love them. Let's see what I could do with them and adding the Bitmojis.
Okay, so yeah, we have some examples of the comic books that Mia made for her students. These will be coming very, very soon in full detail, so you can zoom in and view them at your own leisure, to our brand new section on our Purple ZA website, which showcases stories of innovation from South African classrooms. So that'll be launching very soon. So keep your eye out on our website for that. And then you can have a look in more detail. But Mia, can you tell us what were you trying to achieve with this? Why did you design learning in this way? And very importantly, how did your girls respond?
Well, I think that even though you're studying subjects like history, which are content heavy and are very, very serious. I mean, the Weimar Republic, we were dealing with issues about after World War One, and it's serious. It really, really is. And because it was online, I felt that we needed to add a little bit of humor into it as well, because often you have humor in comic books. And I wanted the girls to, because I am a little eccentric and run around with my sword in class. I wanted them to have that experience still. So my Bitmoji makes silly jokes, and but the content is still all there. And I promise you, I did not expect a decent, a huge reaction about it, because honestly, what you're seeing in front of you was not exactly what my first comic book actually looked like. My first comic book was on the French Revolution, and I didn't actually, I didn't know how to make colors here and put colors there. But still, even though it was really just a skeleton of a comic book, the girls went mad. I got little WhatsApps from them privately. Those are so cool. And one of my girls actually said, Mrs. Nixon, that comic book was sick.
Oh, that's like the ultimate compliment from a teenager, right? And you know what I love about
it?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it is. I think it's such a wonderful, wonderful way to encourage connection, and you're getting some applause from the audience on YouTube also. So we have to kind of keep this short, because that's the point of EDspresso Café, that we don't take up too much of your time, and that's why you've only got a little bit of coffee left, guys who are watching. So I love the idea of your comic book creation, but I also love the idea that actually as teachers, we don't even need to know how to do certain things. As long as we know what's possible, we can assign our students to create with the technology, right? So when I first started teaching with technology, I was like, make a video, guys, you can make a video. I did not know then how to make a video. I do now. But I think shifting to that student creation and that student collaboration space is really, really super. Once you've got you've shown them what's possible, having students create cartoons that demonstrate their understanding and that give a summary of a chapter or a section is a great strategy for engagement. What other ways have you engaged your students in learning? Because I think with a subject like history, that engagement and that keeping the students with you is massively, massively important. What other strategies would you recommend teachers give a go?
Definitely, you can use PowerPoint and Google Slides as a collaborative tool where they can work either in groups on 1 or 2 slides, or they can work as a class with their individual slides. I must say they liked the idea that when they went into the Google Slides, there was a slide with their name on it, especially for them. And for the grade 8s last year, I got them to research a industrial revolution innovation, and they had to, with their Bitmoji, of course, they had to research it and put bits and pieces. And every day, I mean, even if I didn't have it on the plan for the day, they were saying, "Mrs. Nixon, please can we go and look what everyone did? Please can we look at what everyone did?" So they liked the idea that they could share their knowledge, and so that was another tool that I used. Collaboration is key.
Phenomenal. And I think even divide and conquer research where you give, like you said, here's the content. All right, you guys are responsible for this part. You summarize this, make the slide, you put a video in, you add some visuals, and then you guys summarize, summarizing different sections and demonstrating their learning of different sections. And then I actually did that with a science series of lessons once, and had my students each focus on a different planet, and then they created almost like the chapter of the textbook of that particular planet. And I think when they get the opportunity to demonstrate their learning to their peers, we now get a little bit of a different quality. And actually being able to kind of download that and be like, here's your textbook for the section. You guys created this, now go and learn from it. For me, I just saw amazing jumps in results academically in terms of tests and exams. Never mind the importance of those skills that are being developed. So much you can do with collaboration.
You're creating accountability and pride. And they are also accountable to their peers if they are responsible for their learning and the learning of the peers in their class. And I think that's a very, very valuable tool.
Yeah, so Carmen's asking if you find that they work harder.
Absolutely.
I think so, hey?
When it's
leveling
just
it up.
the teacher, when it's just the teacher seeing the work, it's one thing. But when their peers are assessing their work, not even literally, but looking at their work, suddenly they just step it up a notch.
Absolutely. So, Mia, wrapping up, I know that you don't just teach history. You've shared some fabulous ideas for history, but I know that you also teach English. How is it that you're applying these things to other subjects? And do you think there's possibility for us to take these kind of strategies that you've used and the way you've leveraged technology across other subjects?
Absolutely. Lindsay, I love English equally to history. And at the moment, I'm working on another comic book project with, I will be, with my grade 11s perhaps, or even maybe the younger children. I just think that in terms of English, at the moment, we need to be considering how to make children feel, even because it's a language, that they belong in class. We have kids from Asia, we have children whose language is not first language English, and it can be intimidating for them. And I want to know about their language, about their home language, about how it relates to ours. How is it different? And so on one of the translingualism, there was a translingualism webinar that you guys did. It just spoke to me. So I am working on with the Bitmojis as well. The girls, for instance, proverbs. I want to know about the proverbs that come from their culture. Take English proverbs, compare them, take proverbs from Europe, make our own proverbs with the South African context on it, and use their Bitmojis, and they can create comic books, with that kind of thing in mind. So for me, this concept of belonging is what I'm going to work with. Yeah.
And even that, that collaboration element. So actually Mia joined us for our webinar series that we ran around equity, belonging, and anti-racism last year. And that was actually before the translingualism one, I think, if I remember correctly. Just so that you guys know, we're going to be running that series again starting in about 2 weeks' time on Tuesday evening. So if you're interested in leveraging better and more inclusive practices, not necessarily technology specific. So Mia's applied it to the technology space, but really creating classrooms and learning experiences where all of our students feel like they belong. Please feel free to come and join us for our equity, belonging, and anti-racism series. We would really, really love to learn with you. So unfortunately, that's all we have time for this afternoon. But Mia, thank you so very much for joining us and for reminding us of the importance of not feeling like we have to use every tool and strategy, but to really think about how we can leverage the skills that we have as teachers, the tools that we know, and think about how we can be learning architects with those tools in different ways. I think you've done a great job of that, and you really are an inspiration to all of us. So thank you so much for joining us. So until we see you next time, everyone, keep questioning.
Keep maximizing.
Until next time.